Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beef Upfront podcast here on Pick Swap Media. Your host, Ryan Coyle, joined alongside Joe Kmetz after he's back from his little 2-month vacation from the podcast. We're in June now. We're getting closer and closer to football season. 75 days from today, Joe, week 0 will be kicking off. So I think, once a week, once every other week, getting on here, talking some ball and getting ready for the season, I think will be the plan going forward. But as always, Joe, welcome back. How's the start to your summer going? And you ready to talk some college football and some of the top games that we got coming up this season?
It's been good, Beef. Thank you for having me on as always. Definitely, crazy that we're already 75 days from the season. This is just, looking through all these games. You and I talked about it. There's so many awesome games just because, the one positive about realignment, you're getting so many great matchups. I told you, Coyle, how I did this. Basically, I went through every week, picked about 5-6 games that I liked from every week, then tried to narrow it down from there. I think I was just down, my final cut was 22 games. Trying to narrow it down to 10. I deleted my list 4 or 5 times. But this is what I'm going with. This list I'm sticking with. But I'm very excited to talk some college football. I'm starting to get in that mood where, obviously, I always miss it. I would love it's always on. But now I'm starting to be man, I would kill to watch Sam Houston State, New Mexico State on a Tuesday evening in October. I'd kill for that right now. But definitely looking forward to talk some ball. Glad to be back.
Yeah, so the way that we did this, we didn't, compare notes or anything. We just listed our top 10 games from that we're looking forward to this upcoming season. I do think, Joe, the big takeaway is with realignment, say what you want about it, but it's making for some really sick matchups. This was a really hard list to narrow down to the top 10. We'll start with you at 10, but before we get into your number 10, we both threw it on there for honorable mention. November 2nd, I believe it is the day.
Yes, sir.
November 2nd, Beef Up Front gang will be making the trip down to Knoxville, Tennessee for some Tennessee-Kentucky action. So looking forward to that. First SEC game for me. First SEC game for you as well?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Very excited.
Yeah, so that should be a fun one. I think we were looking at the schedule. We're probably expecting Tennessee about 6-1, Kentucky about 5-2, 4-3 going into that game. So should be a fun one getting down south. See how the big boys do it. This isn't Temple and UConn no more. So looking forward to that one. That one cracked both of our honorable mention list. You want to start with number 10. So, not the game you're looking forward to the least, but as far as this list, like we said, it's a hard list to crack it, to narrow down to just 10 games because of all the teams you have to pick from. But what's the 10th game you're looking forward to the most this year, Joe?
So at number 10 for me, this is somewhat kind of an obligatory pick. I'm going Florida State, Georgia Tech, the Dublin game, week 0 to open up the season, noon kickoff on ESPN. I've already got Florida State minus 12.5 locked in. Already placed the bet. This I kind of have at number 10 just because like I've already said, it's the first game of the season. But number 2, this is a kind of a statement game for Florida State. You're coming off of a season where you went 13-0. I think it's only the 3rd time since the BCS started that a Power 5 team has gone undefeated and not made it to either the title game or, in this case, the playoff. But Florida State, I'm sorry, my neighbors are yelling across the street right now. I'm laughing at them. But big game for Florida State going to Ireland, week 0. I feel like they're going to put it up on Georgia Tech. I think Georgia Tech's going to have competing for a bowl game type of season. But Florida State really, I think, is just going to kind of let it loose. And you're going to have people talking about Florida State the way people were talking about Notre Dame after week 0 when they were beating up on Navy. I think Florida State is absolutely an ACC contender and definitely a contender for the playoff this year.
Yeah, this game was pretty close to making my list as well, just for it being, the kickoff game. I do like what Georgia Tech showed in spurts last year, though, and I think this is a big year for them where, like you said, if they can compete and get into a bowl game, that would be a pretty successful season. Coming off 1, 2, 3, they're coming off a 7-win season, including the bowl game win against UCF last year. So if they're able to keep building off that, another 7-5 or 8-4 type year, that'd be big for them. But already a 2-touchdown underdog to Florida State, I think that kind of goes to show expectations for Florida State again. And they did lose a lot of guys to the draft. Obviously, Jordan Travis being kind of the main one. They bring in DJ there at quarterback, so that'll be interesting to see how he kind of plugs and plays back in the ACC. But like you said, lofty expectations and a program that obviously that was the main story around the playoff last year. They felt like they got left out, and they're probably going to be on a revenge tour for that. They're missing a lot of guys from last year, but still same coaching staff. That's going to be kind of the message and the mantra driving that forward. So looking forward to that game as well. Number 10 for me, I'm going to go. It's a week 10 matchup. Ohio State travels to Penn State. So this is probably going to be, all things considered, a top 10 matchup, and it's coming in at number 10 on my list. That just goes to show you how many good games, especially with conference realignment, that we're getting this year. I feel like we ask this every year, but is this Penn State's breakthrough year? I feel like it kind of has to be with Aller going into his second year at the quarterback spot, both of the running backs going into their junior year, the great defense, the work at wide receiver that they did this offseason. I think that's going to be the biggest question mark going forward if they're able to elevate that passing game. But I know I've seen Georgia as the number one team in a lot of polls, preseason, look aheads. The official polls aren't out yet, but I would have Ohio State as my number one team in the nation heading into the year. I think the work they did in the portal with the roster retention and then bringing in a really good veteran quarterback like Will Howard, and then you bring in Quinshon Judkins at the running back spot and Caleb Downs on defense. I mean, this is a loaded roster, and this is going to be Penn State's biggest game of the season. Last year, Aller played terrible against Ohio State and Michigan. Should be a pretty wild atmosphere in this one. It sucks. It probably would have been the whiteout game, but now it's probably going to be a big noon kickoff game, which is a shame. But both of these teams have a chance to be undefeated and likely top 5 teams heading into this one. So Ohio State at Penn State, I think that's going to be, obviously one of the biggest games in the season that probably determines who goes to the big, or at least have a good chance of going to the Big Ten title game, the winner of this one.
Yeah, Coyle, that game is also on my list. That's a little bit higher. We'll get to that when we get there, but I agree. This is a huge year for Penn State. I was listening to Late Kick Live with Josh Pate, a good college football podcast, if you want to listen to that as well. And he was talking about a lot of the NFL guys are still very high on Aller. They still really weren't that moved from him after, his 2 below average games against the 2 best teams he played all year. This is a massive game for Penn State. And I just don't, I get these networks want to get these games for themselves. Like Fox wants this to be big noon kickoff. But the schools should be allowed to set their own kickoff times, because this would be, I think the whiteout game is either going to be against Illinois or against UCLA, one of the two. I don't remember the kickoff time for the UCLA game. But I know the whiteout is cool, but then Penn State fans get to be like, oh, look, we've won our last 6 whiteouts. Well, we played Minnesota, Illinois, Iowa. You're not playing world-beating teams. Mm-hmm. And the whiteout should be a game reserved. Those 2 whiteouts when, they beat Ohio State a couple, back in 2016, I want to say. And then 2018, they lost a very close game. But those were 2 awesome games where the whiteout really made a difference on, the team you're playing against, where most likely Penn State can play Illinois. They might go to 9 overtimes and win 21-19, but they'll still win that game rather than, having that be the whiteout game. But I can talk about and complain about that forever.
I'm going to go into your 9th game on your list.
Yeah, so number 9, I'm going to the Big 12 for this one. This is the last week of the season, Black Friday. I believe it's the 3:30 kickoff. It's either noon or 3:30. It is Oklahoma State at Colorado. I am very, very high on Oklahoma State this season. They are number 2 in the country in terms of returning production. They have the best offensive line coming into this season. All 5 O-linemen are fifth-year seniors, very experienced, a lot of starts. I think Oklahoma State is going to win the Big 12 this year. And, their first year without having to deal with Texas and Oklahoma every year, I think they're going to kindly find get that weight off their shoulders. And, Colorado, who knows at this point in the year what kind of year they could have. There are some people saying, if Shedeur is a top 10 pick, Colorado might be competing for a spot in the Big 12 title game. Colorado also, I think it's Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and Utah all at home. So that's definitely a favorable schedule if you want to try to make it to the Big 12 title game. And I think those are the three best teams in terms of odds to win the conference this year. But I think this is going to be a massive game, and it's perfect that this is like the Friday game. This will be the biggest game that day. You have this game in the Egg Bowl. So I think it's this game leading. No, I think this game's the night game. I don't know. I was looking earlier, but I really think this is going to be a big matchup. This is the only Colorado game I was able to sneak on here and really justify being on the top 10. Because like I said, I really love Oklahoma State very high on this Cowboys team this year. It really wouldn't shock me to see Oklahoma State at 13-0 and getting maybe even a top 2 seed. Because obviously, the 4 best conference champs get that bye. But it wouldn't shock me to see Oklahoma State as like the number 2 team in the country. Because I'm assuming the SEC and the Big Ten are going to beat each other up based on all the talented teams they have now. So I could see, let's say Georgia wins the SEC 13-1. Ohio State, goes 12-1 and 12-1. Maybe one of those, Oklahoma State going undefeated maybe sneaks into like 2. I doubt they'd be 1 over both of them. Maybe they can sneak in there at 2. But I think Oklahoma State's going to have a very good season and a definite team I can see making a dark horse run to like the Final Four.
Yeah, I have one team from the ACC on my list of games. Every other team is from the SEC or the Big Ten. So I think that just goes to show you how dominant both the SEC and Big Ten are going to be this year, because I don't even have a Big 12 team cracking the list. And I think the Big 12, especially losing Texas and Oklahoma, that hurts the brand. Basketball, Big 12 is going to be sick. But now it's definitely the football kind of powers, I guess, have moved on. So that does open the door for a team like an Oklahoma State or potentially a team like Colorado to go out there and shock the world as well. My 9th game, we're going to the SEC for this one. Week 9, Georgia at Ole Miss. Obviously, Georgia's going to be dominant again, returning a lot. You got Kirby Smart. You got 5 stars left and right coming in. And you got Carson Beck back at quarterback. Sounding like he could have been like a mid-round draft pick last year, but he comes back. He's going to be the starter for probably the number 1 team in the nation to start the season. This is a team that obviously yet again is going to have title expectations, but they have to go to Ole Miss this year, to Alabama, and to Texas. Those are probably 3 top 10 teams. Maybe Alabama's like 11th or 12th with Saban stepping down, but Georgia's got a kind of murderer's row of games on the road after last year having really probably them in Michigan, like some of the biggest cupcake schedules for a while, and no secret to why they were able to parlay their normal dominance into a super dominant season last year, Michigan, and then Georgia coming up short in the SEC title game. But I'm expecting a big leap from this Ole Miss team this year. I think them and Penn State are kind of lumped together as those teams are always like, oh, here they come. Are they finally going to do it? Are they finally going to break through? I think Ole Miss has the horses this year to do it, maybe even compete for the SEC title. I think right now in DraftKings, they're plus 650 to win the SEC. And when you get Georgia at home, you got to, I think, like that number a little bit with how talented this roster is. They had the number 1 transfer portal class. Jackson Dart is back, and I think he's a legit threat for the Heisman. This game is very similar to number 10 on my list with Penn State / Ohio State, where it's like, can little brother finally break through on big brother at the end of the day and get like that big time signature win? I think that would be huge for the Ole Miss program. So looking forward to this one as it slots in there at number 9 on my list. Is that one on your list as well?
It is not. No.
It goes to show you how many freaking good games we have to get.
That game was one of the games, that I picked from, but it did not make that.
All right, who slides in at number 9 for you?
Me, number 8.
Sorry, number 8.
No, I thought I messed up again. Number 8 for me, a little bit biased, being a Notre Dame fan. Notre Dame at A&M to open up the season. That's just one of those awesome week 1 games. We got a couple this year. USC, LSU for me personally didn't make my top 10, but that's another great game. We have that Labor Day Sunday. This is going to be that, Labor Day weekend, Saturday night. If you're out at the bar, you're out by the pool with your family, you're doing whatever, just get a TV, outside TV viewing. This is the perfect game for it to kind of kick off the fall. 7:30 kickoff on ABC. Big test for Notre Dame. Massive first game for Mike Elko at A&M. This given me vibes to 20, I think it was 2016, Notre Dame at Texas to open up the season on Labor Day weekend when they lost. Good, he should go. He deserves to go, Nick. He deserves to leave. He would win 6 rings with the Lakers, according to Gino Auriemma, who conveniently, the day before this got announced, goes, "Oh, I think you could win more games with this guy who hasn't coached." Okay. But I think this is going to be a great opportunity for Notre Dame. I saw, according to ESPN's FPI, they have like the best chance to go undefeated, which I feel like they say that about Notre Dame all the time. They'll always drop a couple games. Like this is like Notre Dame, I think will be like 9-3, 10-2. They'll sneak in as like an 11 seed in the playoff. But I do think Notre Dame's gonna have a solid season. This is just kind of me being beaten down for years that Notre Dame's gonna be national title contender, and they always shit the bed in the big stage. But I think Notre Dame can definitely win this game at A&M to vault them into a pretty good spot going forward. But really interested to see how A&M, and Mike Elko handle this. Because last year he coached against Notre Dame when he was at Duke, and Notre Dame needed that Audric Estime touchdown run late to kind of save them from losing that game. So it's going to be really interesting for Notre Dame, who a lot of times people say that they don't play anybody besides like the USCs of the world. This is one of their massive games on their schedule, and I'm looking forward to see how Notre Dame kind of comes out. It's going to be the same old, Notre Dame blowing these big games, or they come out and kind of dominate A&M, which I think they're capable of doing. But who the hell knows?
A&M is a 1-point favorite in this one. So you're saying Notre Dame money line would be the play there?
Yes, I mean I'm gonna definitely put money on it, which is never good. So fade me if you will. But and Notre Dame also this season only 3 true road games. So I mean this is definitely a season for Notre Dame where you really got to capitalize on your opportunities. Only going to 3 actual road environments, and with A&M being one of them, and the USC to end the season as 2 true road games. The only other one is at Purdue, week 3. Then you got a couple of neutral site games with Navy and Army, but all home the rest of the way for the Irish.
Number 8 for me comes in at week 2. We got Texas traveling to the Big House to play Michigan for a noon kick on Fox. I tweeted out the other day, but I was like, I can't believe I can't remember the lack of buzz surrounding like a reigning national champion. I know Harbaugh left. I know they had, 15 guys get drafted or something like that. They had a whopping amount of guys from that title team go out the door, including, JJ McCarthy, a bunch of guys from that offensive line, Blake Corum. And then when your head coach who flipped that program around and turned you into a playoff team and then a national title team leaves as well, there's reason to believe that a step back is probably going to be coming down the door there out in Ann Arbor. But this is still a great game and early in the season where even if Michigan does take a step back to like a 9-3 type of team this year, which I'm seeing a lot of predictions, this is still early enough in the year where it can be a great game. And give a shout out to Texas, because with them going to the SEC, there's no reason for them to play this game anymore. But this is just a great non-conference matchup with Texas traveling to Michigan, 2 of the biggest brands in all of college football. I think you can argue that this is the premier non-conference game of the season, at least in the first couple weeks. Interested, though, to see how Michigan does with all these changes this year. This will be the first, major look at some real competition. Texas national title expectations, I think, are fair coming into this year with Ewers returning after going to the playoff last year. Can they go on the road to Michigan and win, just like they did last year, going to Alabama and winning in the premier non-conference game? We'll see, but that's what we got to look forward to there in week 2. So looking forward to that one. So I want on your list as well, Joe.
Yes, it is. It's up a couple more spots, but I'm with you, Coyle. This is the fact that we get this as a non-conference game. What I was going to say when I got to the pick, but I'll say this now. Enjoy these types of games, because after a couple seasons, there's no way Michigan is going to want to have Texas on their schedule when they already might have a season where they're playing Ohio State, Oregon, USC. Same thing, Texas. We have to play Oklahoma yearly as our rivals. We're playing Georgia, we're playing Bama, we're playing all these SEC schools. Why am I going to want to have a road game at Michigan when I could have SMU come in and we could beat them by 3 touchdowns? Just enjoy these games while we get them. Because I'm even worried as a Notre Dame fan. about how long USC is going to keep scheduling Notre Dame, because it's kind of the same thing. And I saw at first, I saw like I think it was Colin Coward put it out. It was like they should stop playing the game, and I was like, that's just so stupid. It's a big rivalry. But then I'm like, when he broke it down in terms of like, if you're playing all these big games, why are you going to have another non-conference game? This also, by the way, just is going to be another reason why Notre Dame needs to join a conference. But I could talk about that another day. But definitely enjoy these games while we get them.
Yeah, I was saying that to someone the other day. That's my main takeaway with the realignment. It's you're basically exchanging a lack of good non-conference games, but all conference play. You're just going to be getting pretty much elite matchup after elite matchup. So that's something to look forward to there. All right, Joe, number 7 on your list.
So number 7 on my list, Coyle, you already talked about it, but Penn State versus Ohio State, Week 10, big noon kickoff. Should be the night game. Let Fox do a night game with their main crew. Like I don't know. I feel like that should just be the automatic. If Penn State either plays Michigan or Ohio State, that's the whiteout game. That's it. But like you said, Coyle, massive game for Penn State. Kind of another fan base, kind of like me with Notre Dame. Is it going to be same old Penn State, or are they going to finally be able to win a big game? Because if they win that game, Luke actually sent this to me on TikTok this morning about this game. Penn State wins this game, they're very much in a position to go out and play in and potentially win the Big Ten. And you can see Penn State getting one of those top 4 buys. But
Get this one at home too.
Yeah, exactly. So that's you already kind of talked about the game, so I won't go into too much more. But number 7 for me is Penn State, Ohio State.
All right, 7 for me comes in week 7. I'm going with their first matchup in the latest version of this rivalry, as Texas and Oklahoma both transition to the SEC. That comes in at number 7 for me. Game kicking off, I don't know if you saw, Joe, at 3:30 this year. That's always a noon Eastern, 11 Central kickoff. So kicking off at 3:30 on ABC. Red River rivalry. I always like to say that one 5 times fast. You're going to screw that one up, but first time as they're playing in the SEC, just another chapter in this, I think you could say, top 2, top 3 rivalry in college football. Huge year for Venables. I think that if they don't go 9-3 or better, there's going to be a lot of smoke around him, especially if Texas does go and win the national championship this year or get back to the semifinals at least. So that kind of is like what we're going to probably talk about eventually with Michigan and Ohio State, where it's like, all right, your rival keeps kind of dominating. What's the issue with you? Are you able to figure it out and kind of turn it around? This is a big year for Oklahoma. As we know, though, this game's always a neutral site, but Texas title expectations. Last year, though, Oklahoma did get the best of Texas in that game. Their one regular season loss. Remember watching that one. But exciting game every year. I feel like there's always a lot of fireworks.
Yeah, Coyle, I agree. This game would have been like if we were doing a top 15, this would have been like number 11 for me. I kept this one off. Very hard for me to do so. But I have Texas on this list 3 times, and I haven't gotten it yet. So
Yeah.
I'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, it was kind of weird, have this game be 3:30. I always, this game being the 12 o'clock kickoff leading you into the day. It's that perfect week where it's, the weather's really starting to shift from like warm summer weather to like, put a hoodie on and shorts, go outside, watch the game, type of weather. So I think it's gonna be a little weird being at 3:30. This game's gonna be over. We're gonna go outside. It's gonna be pitch black outside. But it's still an awesome game. I'm glad that they're not taking this game away from us. That like with realignment and stuff. So I think that's really awesome. But cool, kind of like you said, if Oklahoma has another so-so season, which is very possible going into the SEC in year 1, and you're looking at Texas making the playoff, potentially making another run, it's kind of like how before, even when Harbaugh was there, before he won the national title, people talking about Michigan, like look at Ohio State going to the playoffs all these years. They won the title in 2014. They had that 11 or 12 game winning streak. People were ready to fire Harbaugh, and then he finally turned it around. Brent Venables, big year. If he doesn't have a good year, hell, if he go, like, let's say they go 7-5, which isn't impossible to think of, there's a chance he can get fired.
If he goes 7-5, I think anything, unless there's like some major injuries, I think anything less than 9-3, he's gonna have some real heat around him.
Yeah, I'd say like the floor is probably like 8-4. Like if you go
Mhm.
worse than 4, you probably get fired. 8-4, you get another year, depending on like if you beat Bama or something. I don't even know if Oklahoma plays Bama, but yeah, I agree. Definitely a big important year for Venables.
All right, game number 6.
So this is the last time I'll be biased with Notre Dame, but Florida State Notre Dame Week 11 NBC hasn't been announced kickoff time yet. I'm assuming that'll be their 7:30 game for Notre Dame. Week 11, you got a couple of great games that week. You have Florida State Notre Dame, Bama LSU. Cole, you were saying earlier Georgia Ole Miss. Um, I'm just That's going to be a great week of college football. But this is a great game for me because this is another historic kind of game that used to be played a lot more. Not necessarily rivals, but Florida State Notre Dame. Back in the '90s were always some of the best teams in the country, getting together all the time along with Notre Dame and Miami. This is just a great game for Notre Dame, especially Notre Dame's season. Kind of I already said is kind of bookended by at A&M at USC. Then right in the middle you have this game as a massive jumping block game for Notre Dame. So I'm really looking forward to that. And that could be, Notre Dame either needing a win to kind of stay in the hunt for the playoff, or they're undefeated, and Florida State might potentially be undefeated heading into that game as well. So really looking forward to that one. I already did my Notre Dame and Florida State talk, so I'll move on to you, Coyle, getting to your number 6.
Yeah, number 6. Usually, I mean, at least for the past few years, this probably is in my top 2, at worst top 3. But we talked about it a little bit earlier that Michigan is probably going to be taking a step back this year. So this game moved down the pole a little bit for me. But I have the Michigan Ohio State game here this year. Noon kickoff on Fox per usual. But this one is at Ohio State this year. Like we said, it's called the game. If Ohio State is undefeated headed into this, loses and then doesn't win the national championship, does Ryan Day get fired? That's kind of the main question. Another loss to Michigan after Ohio State dominated that rivalry for so many years as we were kind of growing up. But um, there's always a lot of juice around this one. And even if Michigan does take a step back, if they're like 8-3 headed into this matchup, you still got to give them a shot. Ohio State's kind of got to flip the narrative a little bit. Last year was a really good game, but are they able to get it done this year? I think Ohio State, we'll talk about them a little bit more on my list as we go up more, but I think entering the season, they have, if not as much pressure as any team in the country this year.
Yeah, Coyle. This game actually didn't make my list.
Wow.
But kind of like how you said about Michigan, I think they're going to take a step back. And this is a game we get every year. Like I also didn't, even though I'm obviously looking forward to these games, I also didn't put, Auburn, Alabama. I did not put the Iron Bowl on here this year, which is normally a game every year you can circle. Like that's going to be one of the biggest games every year. But partially for me, just because of the amount of new like crossover conference games we're getting. It's one of the reasons I didn't put it. We'll get into my top 5 in a second here, and you'll understand kind of why that game didn't make the cut. But just because there's so many awesome games, like if you told somebody 15 years ago that these games are happening, they'd be like, "Oh my god, it's like the best season ever." But I'm going to kind of get a number 5. Speaking of Michigan, we talked about the game already, but Texas at Michigan, it's my number 5, week 2. It's a big noon kickoff on Fox. Glad we're getting more better week 2 games. I remember, recently a couple of years ago was you'd load up week 1, but then week 2, like the best game was like TCU taking on like Houston before they were in the Big 12. Now they're going to be a little bit better, but you really wouldn't have great games. Like week 2 was always like Skyhawk week, and that was it. And there were no other like really important games. But getting a great game week 2, great non-conference game. I already said it. Enjoy these while they last because there's not many more. After the scheduled games run out, you're not going to be seeing games all the time. But and like I said, shout out for these 2 teams for even agreeing to play this game. But that's kind of my number 5. And then top 4, I have 3 SEC games, 1 Big Ten game. So kind of like you said, Coyle, not a lot of the other 2 conferences. And then obviously no G5s made the cut. But
game number 5 for me, I will be stunned if this is on your list, but it is Miami at Florida, 3:30 ABC kickoff, week 1. Looking forward to this one a lot because I think there's so much pressure on this game. Like I feel like both coaches, Mario Cristobal at Miami, Billy Napier at Florida, the loser of this game is on fire. It's kind of already they might be halfway out the door according to their fan base if they lose whoever winds up losing this game. I think as of right now, Miami's actually a 2-point favorite, and this one's at the Swamp. There's definitely more pressure, I think, on Billy Napier than Miami, but because if you look at Florida's schedule, I think it's their last 5 games. They're probably going to be against top 10 teams. Like it's like Georgia, Alabama, Texas, and like Ole Miss. I think are all looped into their like final 5 games of the season. So Florida needs it more than Miami because Miami with the ACC, Clemson, and Florida State probably your only legit threats there. Miami could be like a team like you were saying with Oklahoma State where they kind of just kind of run through their schedule. They got the Florida State game, but this is a big one for them too. And if they're able to get this win at Miami, I think that's kind of at Florida. It's a great kind of catapult into the rest of your season and help give you some momentum. So huge pressure and huge expectations on both of these coaches entering the season where if either one of them falls flat, maybe they're on their way out. I think Mario has probably another year to his leash than Billy Napier, but I could definitely see Napier out of a job this time next year. So looking forward to that one in week 1. That one didn't crack your list, did it, Joe?
It did not. It was one of the games, I put down, but it didn't make my top 10. That's a game as of right now, I'm thinking Florida wins. Kind of reminds me of 2 years ago when Utah was getting all the hype. Obviously, it's a little different. Utah going to Florida, and playing in that heat. But Miami getting all this hype. They got Cam Ward in the portal. They're kind of like you were saying, looking at as like that 3rd or 4th team in the ACC that really could make a run. Going to Florida, who everyone's kind of already writing off. People are already saying Napier's gone. They have number 1 hardest schedule this season. Maybe, at least in our lifetime, Coyle, maybe the hardest schedule ever. Like, non-conference getting Miami and UCF, who UCF is now a power conference team. UCF's a pretty decent team as well.
And Florida State.
Yeah, Florida State. And then I think their one kind of cakewalk game was like Samford. Besides that.
They end the season with at Tennessee, versus Kentucky, versus Georgia, at Texas, versus LSU, versus Ole Miss, at Florida State. That could be, I don't think Kentucky, but if all shakes right in these teams' eyes, probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of their last 6 games are probably going to be against playoff teams if all things shake right.
Like Florida could go 4-8 and still be one of the 25 best teams in the country, but we would have no idea of knowing because they went 4-8. Like it's just crazy how this schedule. This is another thing. Like enjoy crazy schedules like this because you think Florida is going to want to schedule these games in the future. Even like the Florida State rivalry. Who knows what realignment? But let's say these conferences stay their way for a while. Florida's not going to be like, hey, let's play Florida State every year at the end of the season. Florida State kind of getting some, lighter competition in the ACC where Florida, a mid-tier team in the SEC might be Oklahoma. Like, it's just crazy. But, speaking of the SEC, we'll go into my number 4, Georgia at Bama, week 5, 7:30 on ABC.
Really? All the way down at 4?
Once again, when I get into my top 3, you'll understand why. But this is my number 4 just because these teams have played in the regular season before. This could potentially be week 5. Bama, Bama could be. I think they'll be undefeated at this point. Georgia, I think, will be undefeated at this point. You could have, Georgia number 1, Bama number 4. This is going to be an unreal game. And I love how this is already 7:30 ABC. A lot of these games are still to be announced, which I think SEC tomorrow. On Wednesday. Yeah, tomorrow is either tomorrow or Wednesday. It is tomorrow. Going to be announcing a bunch of more kickoff times. Which
I think the rest of the conference games.
Yeah, I think we after the show need to talk about what we're going to do for our game. But this game is going to be awesome. We already talked about Georgia. Bama year 1 under DeBoer, which there's not many coaches that are put in such an unfair position than DeBoer, because Bama fans are kind of expecting, okay, let's go win another national title, or let's go compete for a national title. Like DeBoer could go 9-3, and Bama fans would want his head. They'll be like, "What is this like? We didn't win double-digit games this year. Like, what's going on?"
Yep.
But I'm really excited to see what DeBoer does. He's won at every level, as we talked about last season when he was at Washington. He got Washington from the depths of hell and, in the end of the Pac-12 all the way to the national title game. That Michigan team was just better, so you really can't fault him. I don't care what coach is on the other sideline. You're probably not out coaching Harbaugh with that roster that he had in Michigan. But I'm really looking forward to this. Georgia, I think it's them and Ohio State are the two odds-on favorites to win the national title right now. So this is going to be a massive game, that either one of these teams can lose and probably be totally fine, especially now with the 12-team playoff. But on the other hand, let's say Georgia, goes on the road, beats Bama. That gives them like 2 or 3 losses worth of room. Because even if Bama has an average season, you still went on the road and beat Bama. Just like when Cincinnati made the playoff, back in 2021, when they beat Notre Dame on the road. Notre Dame went 11-1. That wasn't the best Notre Dame team, but they still had a win at Notre Dame on their resume, which did a lot for them. Obviously, Georgia, Cincinnati are 2 different stratospheres. I'm not trying to compare the two. But winning a game like this could really kind of set you up for long-term success. So this is going to be just an incredible game. And I'm not done talking about the dogs yet. I'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, my number 4 matchup includes Alabama as well. It's a Week 11 matchup as they travel to Baton Rouge to play LSU. I feel like more times than not, these two teams give us a really good game. I remember that one a couple years back when Bryce Young was his last year at LSU. That was a pretty crazy one where LSU went for 2 for the win, right? To knock off Bama. I remember being. Yeah. I think that was.
Yeah, we were beer boys. Yeah. Yes. And Brian Kelly had nothing.
Senior year? No, I think that was just like visiting. But another where it's just 2 of the premier bands, 2 of the premier brands in the sport meeting up late in the season. Both these teams, unless all goes haywire, they're both going to be right there in the conversation for the playoff. And I think we'll have a lot more answers to our question where you were talking about the Georgia Bama game. That's earlier in the season. You're, another 5-6 weeks down the road once this matchup comes up. What does year 1 Bama look like under DeBoer, and what does year 3 look like for Kelly at LSU? Because I think he's had more success than Venables at Oklahoma so far. But if he doesn't perform well this year, if they're not at least in the playoff, I think there's going to start to be some noise around his job as well. So that's going to be an awesome one. Alabama, LSU at night. I would assume that game should be another awesome one. So that's my number 4. That one crack your list, Joe?
It did not. That was another one. Like, I at one point had it in, and then I, cleared the list, did it again. That was another one of those games that is right there that really you could interchange with probably any of these games, and I'd be okay with. But my number 3, moving on, once again involves the Georgia Bulldogs. This one, they're also going on the road to Texas. Georgia at Texas is my number 3 game. That is Week 8. Hadn't been announced yet. Even when I look on ESPN, like what network, I'm assuming that's going to be an ACC game or ABC game. Excuse me, not ACC. ABC, that'll be like either the 3:30 slot or the night slot. But kind of like we've already been talking a lot about Texas and Georgia, so I won't go too in depth to the game. 2 national title contenders, a game potentially where Week 8 you could have number 1 versus number 2. If things break the right way, you might have the 2 best teams in the country at that time going up against each other. But at the same time, like Texas or even Georgia might have a loss or 2 already. Georgia having to play at Bama and Texas, I know you already said it, Coyle, is really, they're stepping up this year for sure. But I'm laughing, Coyle, you'll see the text later. Georgia at Texas, number 3, going to be an incredible game. Looking forward to that. One of the benefits of realignment is the fact that we get games like this. Very excited. Week 8. I looked, every week is just loaded. Like, this feels like on paper one of the best seasons in terms of quality matchups ever. It's awesome. But I'll let you, Coyle, go for number 3.
Yeah, before we get into our number 3, we got Kevin checking in the comments here. Drew Aller, Heisman watch. Any interest in that potentially happening there, Joseph? I don't think so. He didn't impress me enough last year, but also I think they're just going to be so reliant on the running game again. But any take on that?
I feel like this is just going to kind of be every year with Penn State. It's like, oh, this is the year This is the year. Trust me, I've been saying it with Notre Dame for years. This is going to be the year. Oh, yeah, things will be different this year. They probably won't. Because at the end of the day, it seems like you've kind of maxed out. Like, I think Aller has a great ceiling, but I don't know if James Franklin is the coach to really unlock that. It seems like Franklin's kind of hit his ceiling at Penn State. Now, we could see what happens this year with the no divisions. Maybe he sneaks in at like number 2 to go to the Big Ten title game. But I would not, kind of like how Coyle said last year, either buy a Chipotle burrito or bet this bet. Just go get Chipotle. Go have a nice lunch and thank Drew Aller for it, because I do not see him winning the Heisman.
He is at 45-1 to win it right now. So the books aren't having much faith in him either. My number 3 game will stay in the Big Ten. Ohio State at Oregon, week 7. This is just another one where this is the good benefit of realignment. You know, we were talking about it earlier, Joe. Instead of Ohio State versus Maryland, we're getting Ohio State versus Oregon, and probably going into this game, 2 top 5 teams, 2 probably undefeated teams, 2 teams with lofty expectations. My opinion, the best 2 teams in the Big Ten this year on paper. Both should be undefeated entering this matchup. And I said it earlier, I think Ohio State has the most pressure of any team in the country this year. This is obviously a big test. This is their first major test of the year, and going to Oregon. It's one of those like college football off-season things on these like strictly college football pages. They're like rank the top like 10 atmospheres in college football, and I've been seeing like more and more like Oregon in like the top 5. So no cupcake of a game in this one. I remember they played in the non-con just a few years ago when we were still in school, but that should be an awesome one. Probably both 6-0 heading into that game. It should be a blast. Was that able to crack your top 2?
That's my number 2 game that I'll just talk about right now and keep going. Yes, or Ohio State going to the Autzen Zoo, going to Oregon. You know, I think both of these. I think it's these 2 teams, like Georgia and Texas, are the top 4 for national title odds. The winner of this game has the inside track to get that. You know, like the 1 seed in the Big Ten. You know, winner of this game probably is going to be a favorite to at least be in the game. You know, the loser has definitely a lot less wiggle room. But cool, kind of like you already said. I mean, this could be number 1 versus number 2. 2 awesome teams. Lanning is just continuing to build Oregon. Now that he's in the Big Ten, they can really take off with all the resources they're about to get. But I really love this game. This game was a toss-up with my number 1 game that I'll get into in a little bit. But Cole, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is a matchup you talked about just a little bit ago. Week 8, Georgia at Texas. Top 2 teams in the SEC, I think we could say, going into the year. Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck, Sark in his offense versus Kirby in that defense. Maybe, you know, part 1 of the 2-part series where these 2 teams meet up in the SEC championship. Hell, who knows, maybe even in the college football playoff, but that should be an awesome one. Another one where it's just 2 of the premier brands in all of college football meeting up there. Kevin had another question involving quarterback in this game as well. Do you think Quinn Ewers, it's his coming out party this year and he helps get them over the top?
I want to say yes, but I don't know. I mean, going to the SEC, you're definitely taking a step up in competition, where there were even times against Big 12 competition where he kind of just seemed to be just like happy to be there, and like it didn't seem like he wanted to take over a game. Like I kind of want to see that from him this year. Also, the Hartford campus is dead. Going down to D3 athletics, it was terrible. Mikey Metz has left Hartford. That campus has long been dead. Even going up there to visit him at one point, I'm like, this place sucks. There's no energy, no like good vibes. It's just, that place is hell on earth, and I'm so happy that he is not going there anymore, so that I don't have to go there anymore, because that place sucks. Quinn Ewers breakout year. I'm gonna lean no. Right now, because you know when you're going in and out against Georgia, Bama, Oklahoma, still, I don't know if you're really gonna be able to. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if Texas goes under in their win total this year.
Number 2 in the Heisman odds at 9-1 there as well.
I don't like that bet. I do not like Ewers.
All right. Your number 1 game of the 2024-2025 college football season that you are looking forward to, Joe.
Coyle, I think this might be a game you have as well at number 1. I'm going with Texas at Texas A&M, Week 14, first time we're getting this rivalry back in, I think, since 2011. These two fan bases talk so much shit to each other online all the time. They hate each other. They both think that they're better than each other because, A&M getting to go to the left Texas. Texas thought they were better because they got to be on their own. All this crap. They were too scared to schedule each other in the non-conference. And now you get to see this game the last week of the season, along with all the other awesome rivalry games. Like, we could have a potential 3-game window where it's Ohio State, Michigan, Iron Bowl at 3:30 with Auburn, Alabama, and then the night game is Texas A&M. I'm really looking forward to this game just because of the fact that we get an old rivalry back that should have never stopped. I know, all the things I was just saying about these rivalries might be stopping out because of realignment anyways, but I'm very excited that we get this game back, and we get it to end the season as well. That it's not like, Oregon and Washington are trying to make Oregon State, Washington State happy, but like week 3, those guys are playing each other, and like, no, that should be the end of the season. Just like this game, just how it was meant to be, just how it used to be all the time. Texas getting another massive rival back, I think, is great for the sport. And I think this is going to be one of the most watched games of the whole season. And A&M has a real chance to play spoiler. You could kind of have like West Virginia Pitt vibes back from 2007 when West Virginia was number 2 and they got upset by like a 4-8 Pitt team. Not saying A&M is going to be that bad, but you can have Texas, on the brink of either going to the SEC title game or at the very least with a win, locking up a playoff spot. They lose that game, all of a sudden Texas might be sweating out a playoff bid, and A&M might sneak in, and steal their spot as well. So that could be a game with massive, massive playoff implications. And like I said, the fact that we just got this rivalry back is awesome.
We got David checking in the chat as well. Penn State at USC. That was one of my, I think I said to you earlier, 26 games I had, and then kind of narrowing it down to 10. That was definitely one of those top 25, but just goes to show you how many good games we have when another game where it's two of the premier brands in the sport, not even cracking the top 10 for our list. I just think of the Rose Bowl when I see this matchup on paper.
Yes, I agree. I remember I had to fucking work one year. I was like 16 working, or maybe I was 17, working at a restaurant on New Year's Day, watching the game on the TV as I'm like bringing people drink. This sucked because I just watched the game the whole time. But yeah, no, just because we don't say a game doesn't mean, because I'm with you, Coyle. Like, I had Penn State USC. I started with like 50 games, then I narrowed it down to 20, and that's when I texted you like half an hour before we started. I'm like, dude, I've had like this list 5 different ways because there's so many games I could interchange. Like, I agree, Penn State USC is awesome. That's also a great week. I got to see it because I wrote down some of the games that week. You have Florida, Tennessee, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, USC. You had the Red River rivalry that week. And then even like from Big 12 land, you have Kansas State, Colorado. Like, that's another massive game for Colorado as well. Like, big games that week. Every week there's so many awesome games. But I do agree that is going to be a massive game, when that time comes around, especially for Penn State, who, we've talked about at length already.
All right. Well, my number one game, I find it very interesting that your number one game didn't even make it onto my top 10 list. And then I think my number one game, you had a little further back, around 5 or 6, but I went with that Georgia-Alabama matchup. Week 5. Yeah, week 5 this year. You said that they have played in the regular season before. They have, but we see them, more times than not, SEC championship or even the national championship that one year. But they've only played, this is only going to be their 3rd time playing in the regular season since 2010, I believe. So 2 teams that we don't see that often. I mean, because they're, cross conference, they don't play every year like they used to. So this is going to be a great one. I think it's the premier game on the college football calendar this year. So that's why I'm looking forward to it the most. Like I said, their 3rd matchup in the regular season since 2010. SEC super loaded, as we've touched on throughout the entire show. As always, every matchup matters. The tickets for this one to just get your foot in the door probably going to be about $300 or so. So I remember seeing hotels all around the area already booked, and they're going for like a grand a night or something. So this one is going to be no shortage of fun, and I think the real first kind of like elite game for DeBoer at Alabama. So that should be an awesome one, and wouldn't be surprised, as always, to see those 2 teams competing for a playoff spot at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, said it best. Like I said, I already talked about the game. Wouldn't be shocked if we get this as a rematch later, either in the SEC title game or the playoff, or maybe even both, depending on how good Alabama really is this year. But just like I said, all these games just kick so much at. Like this season is going to be so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like I haven't looked forward to a season like this in a very long time. And there have been some years, like where I've just been itching for college football. I'm surprisingly not like that, but like just the sheer amount of awesome games we're getting this season, it's incredible.
Yeah, and just to add, extra salt to the wound for Georgia, or any extra motivation for that one, they have a lot of bad energy to get out on this Alabama team after basically Alabama kept them out of the playoff last year, and then they still felt like they were the number one team, but all they had to do was win that SEC title game and they would have been in. But all right, that'll do it for our first episode here of the off season, as we're in June, 75 days away from kickoff with your number 10 game between Florida State and Georgia Tech in Dublin, Ireland. But that'll do it for this episode. As always, please like, subscribe, and we say we'll probably be doing this once a week, once every other week, and just touch on some of the major topics as we go forward. Thanks all for listening. We will talk soon.